Hi there, I'm Coach Kenneth,
And I'm Coach Victoria.
and in this video we're going to be talking to you about struggling through your breakup.
This is going to be a very real one.
Yeah, going through a breakup is like a roller coaster, and it's like, but you can't see the tracks.
And you can't get off.
Right? You just don't know where it's going to go, how it's going to go. And you're constantly going through these twists and turns in some ways because you're trying to figure out what's going to happen with you and your ex if you can turn it around, and watching what they're doing on social media and not knowing how to handle your particular situation. It's awful. Your whole life feels out of control. You feel no kind of stability within yourself. Your body feels out of control. You're on the toilet 6 hours a day. You haven't eaten in 3 days, right? It's just awful.
When we're in the pits of grief, we really feel it. And during a breakup, we can have those ups and downs. And sometimes you're just struggling. So we figured we would make this video to empathize with you, to help you feel less alone through this, and to talk a little bit more about this pain, where it's coming from, how to cope with it. And so we all know about attachment styles at this point, probably, if you've been watching this channel for any length of time. And we love to educate you all on relationships, how they work, how they dissolve. You can know all of that and still feel so much pain.
Yes.
Nothing at all makes us immune from grief and from grief in a breakup.
Yeah. And everybody goes through it, okay? You can only imagine the people that we've talked to in this field. Royalty, right? Very famous actors and actresses, people in sports, people very high up in government, people high up in military, doctors, lawyers. Everybody is impacted by a breakup.
Counselors, people in our field.
Half the breakup coaches came to us. Actually, it's more than half at this point.
But it's true. You know, these are things that affect all of us because we're human beings and we're going through it. Yeah. And when we're in the midst of it, we can be feeling this unbearable pain that really does take over, especially right after the breakup, sometimes even months after. Sometimes we'll think we'll be doing good for a week or so, and then we hear a song on a radio and it hits us, or something will remind you of your ex, and then you feel like you're back to square one.
I mean, sometimes it can happen after a year. I've talked to people that were doing good for a year, and something happens with their ex. They find out that they're dating again. It could be anything. They hear something about their ex. They bump into their ex, and it feels like the breakup is happening all over again. It is awful.
Yeah, and we have a lot of physiological symptoms that we talk about all the time. We talked about the diarrhea.
Oh,
There's
my
also
gosh.
difficulty sleeping. For a lot of people, they find that waking up in the morning is the worst part, because it's kind of like when you're sleeping, you can detach from reality a little bit, and when you wake up, you're waking up in the reality of your partner not being in your life anymore.
You know, the symptoms I had were brutal. I mean, I would have a lot of night sweats where I'd wake up and my shirt and my boxers would be damp with like that, you know, like you're sweating.
The panic sweat.
Yeah, and it's like, and sometimes it would happen several times a night. Wow. It's like awful, and you wake up and you're like clammy, like you have the flu or something like that. And it's just a terrible feeling to go through that. Not eating, not sleeping. You feel like you're in a fog. You can't think clearly, and your mind just keeps going back to that one thing about your ex and what's going to happen. So you feel totally out of control. And for me, I think a lot of my symptoms mirrored how I felt as a kid, having separation anxiety and going to my dad's house and spending time there away from my mom. And so now as an adult, I look back and I see, oh, I was feeling the same way. I would get earaches as a kid and anxiety and crying and stuff like that. And so now it's like, oh, no wonder why. It's similar to what I experienced as a kid.
And for a lot of people, they experience extremes of things. So either not eating at all or eating everything, or not sleeping at all, or oversleeping, or no energy at all, or bursts of energy that you can't contain or control, you know. And I just think about somebody reaching into either that hyper arousal state when we're outside. If you guys know about the window of tolerance, if you get outside of that state, it's typically more of a panic, you know, more that kind of a reaction, or hypoarousal where you kind of zone out and you're kind of dissociative in that kind of a state.
Yeah.
So breakups can impact different people differently, and when you're going through it, you are going through it. You know, there's also the mental battle that maybe is less talked about. You know, the neuroticism of a breakup. What is my ex doing right now? Are they thinking about me? Have they posted something? What's on their story today? What's not on their story? You know?
And then if they post anything that feels really relevant to you, it's like... And sometimes they feel like very personal attacks. Like, oh, if you're dating a narcissist, and you're like, what?
Is that
Are you
me?
saying I'm a narcissist? Like, you see things like that all the time, and it's like, I can't believe you would think that.
Yeah.
Or they post a song, and you're like, is that song about us? Is it about me?
You're looking up the lyrics. You're looking up the album.
The track before, the track
Right?
after.
Where the
What
lead singer
inspired
was
the
born.
song. Everything. It doesn't stop.
So there is something mental that takes over us, you know, just that anxiety, that separation anxiety that we experience. And if you're anything like me, you tend to intellectualize the pain. There's some of us who are a little bit more nerdy. We like to understand everything. We were talking earlier about how knowing all of this stuff does not make you immune to the pain of a breakup. Sometimes you might get into that train of thought of, well, if I understand it, then I'll get over it. You know, if I'm able to see what's going on, then it'll go away finally. But that's not really how it works. You know, we are here to learn and to share this information with you, not for it to magically poof disappear, but for you all to learn how to cope with it better.
Yeah.
And I put the emphasis on coping here because this is one of those things where there is no cure, right? Is there a cure to heartbreak? It's kind of like saying that there's like a cure to a natural disaster or a cure to an emotion, right? These are just things that we experience and that more so flow through us. I feel very zen. Flow through us rather than things that we cure and then we never experience again in our lifetime. I remember when I was back in high school, I used to really struggle with panic disorder. I don't know if any of you know about that. But I remember researching as, you know, a teen, how do I get rid of this? This is happening to me. I don't know what's going on. And reading online, them saying there's no cure to anxiety. And that gave me so much more anxiety. What do you mean?
That's it. I'm stuck like this forever.
Right? I was like, what do you mean there's no cure? I'm trying to get rid of this. I'm trying not to think this way or feel this way anymore. And so on one side, it can be terrifying to hear that there's no cure, but on the other side, it's really about being able to take care of yourself. The focus really is on coping here. How can we make this bearable as it flows through us and as this experience passes through us?
You'll get through it, but it's a process, and it does take time. And, you know, don't be surprised if you feel better for a while and then something happens and you hear from your ex or you hear something about your ex or all the other things I mentioned a minute ago, and now all of a sudden you feel like you're heartbroken again. Okay, that is normal. I've talked to many people about that over the years. You have to talk about it. Margaret used to say you have to talk about it. And Margaret couldn't keep me out of her office, honestly. I would be in there a couple times a week and sometimes for hours and hours at a time. If she had a long break between clients, she would just talk to me forever until she threw me out. So gently, as you can imagine. But it's normal to go through that and all these obsessive thoughts about questioning, like, well, what's going on with me? How could I have regressed? I thought I was over this. Well, we're human beings and we attach and we love and we care about people and you just don't magically forget them. You know how you think your ex can magically forget you? They can't. Okay? Now they're going to be cold, and the more that you push them, the more they're going to keep those walls up, but that doesn't mean they're not going through a lot more than you realize behind the scenes. You know, it's normal. You care about somebody, you love them. You can't just stop loving somebody. And you know, if you truly love somebody, you're going to care about them on some level. And just understand that even though your ex is hiding it, especially if they were the dumper, it doesn't mean they're not going through this. And a lot of times, and this is the shocking thing, the ex that broke up with you winds up feeling these symptoms months later. I hear it all the time. My avoidant ex broke up with me. I thought I'd never hear from him again. And then he reached out 5 months later. And then sometimes they get rejected and they're doing a call with me like, I was doing okay, right?
Yeah. It's quite wild to see that happen because you don't think that your ex might be struggling either. You know, when you're in the depths of it, a thought that can be even more painful for us is my ex doesn't care. My ex is probably out there and enjoying their life, you know? And so that is just kind of like the twist in the knife that really hurts, but we don't know. They go through their own process, and we have tons of videos on, you know, the dumpers process.
Yep.
So a big focus here in this video is what do you do when you're struggling with a breakup? We had mentioned the focus on coping.
And watching the videos over and over and over again.
And we have a lot of information out there that can help. We have tons of videos on healing through the breakup, coping with the breakup depression, all of these things that you might be dealing with. And so when we're in this state where we're struggling, a lot of times we're just so focused on the pain going away. I don't want to feel this. This is so intense. This is excruciating. And, you know, there's been studies that show emotional pain lights up some of the same areas of our brain that physical pain does. You know, so we have to remember to take care of ourselves and our bodies just like we would if we were in physical pain. And when we're resisting the pain, a lot of times we end up causing ourselves more pain by not being able to accept what we're feeling. Accept the emotion. And so the focus here is, what can I do to make myself more comfortable during this time?
And you know the saying, what resist persists. So don't try and sweep things under the rug. You'll get through it easier and in a healthier way by working through it. That's why we have the creative healing course, the workbooks. There are thousands of questions that are going to help you learn and grow on top of all the information in the videos and the activities and stuff. That process really gets you through a breakup in a much healthier way than, you know, just stalking your ex on Instagram or WhatsApp.
Right. And remind yourself that this too shall pass. This too shall pass. You know, there will come waves of grief in grief. You know, it's very normal for there to be ups and downs. When we're in pain, that moment can feel like forever. I remember in, some course or credit that I was taking, our professor had us do this exercise where we had put a marble in our shoe. And we had to go through the entire lesson with the marble in our shoe. And so the whole point there was it can be something that is so small. It can be something that feels like a passing moment. But in our minds, when our entire attention is focused on that pain or that discomfort, it feels like forever.
Wow, that's a good point.
And so we have to remind ourselves that there will be difficult days, and there's going to be days that are lighter. There's going to be days that are less heavy. There's going to be days that are easier. And learning about breakups, learning about relationships, learning about attachment styles, these things can help us to not panic, right? And think some of those really extreme thoughts, right? Can kind of soothe us, cope, right?
Educating yourself really does make a huge difference. It really makes you feel enlightened through the process instead of just obsessing about your ex.
Right.
And you start to feel better about yourself and understanding what happened and how to fix it if they come back. But if not, to get to a great place where you're feeling like, okay, if they don't come back, I still want to have a great dating life or a great life and want to feel better about myself.
Exactly. And something that I chronically say in these videos, I'm always giving myself that little caveat of, it's easier said than done. You know, I'm sitting here and it's comfy and it's easier said than done. But I'm going to argue this time that it's easier done than said. You know, with a lot of these things that we're talking about, these techniques to cope through the pain, these ways to soothe ourselves, to take care of ourselves, a lot of times our brain goes to that neurotic place where we want to check and we want to do some unhealthy ways of coping that we're probably going to do anyways, right? And so my argument here is it's better done than said. It's better to give these things a try. Give them a genuine try. And many of you might say, well, I've tried everything. I've done everything. It takes small steps and it takes consistency.
Yep.
So That's my argument for today. I'm taking back my caveat.
It's a lot to think about. It's a lot to process. And just understand it is a process. Some days are going to be better. Sometimes it will make you feel like the breakup just happened again. But work through it as healthy as you can. Get a therapist. Keep watching the videos. Look at the creative healing course of the workbooks. And all the materials that we provide will help you get to a much better place.
Exactly.
Okay. So hopefully this one's been helpful to you. And of course, if you want to get our help personally, you can get that on our website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Zoom calls. Coach Victoria is also available for Zoom calls.
I'm here whenever you'd like to chat.
Just click on her name on the top of the website to schedule with her. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.